On a calm Tuesday morning, after my daughter had already headed out to work, I brought in a guy to cut the grass. The neighborhood was still, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound stand out. Not even an hour had passed when my phone buzzed in my pocket. His voice was low, almost cautious. "Sir, I don't want to scare you, but is anyone else staying in that house?" My fingers tightened around the warm ceramic of my coffee cup, then went strangely numb. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though a cold ripple had already started climbing my back. "There's crying," he murmured, "coming from the basement, and it's not a television." That was the instant something inside me shifted. A realization settled in, that my house, my safe, familiar house, might be keeping something from me. Something I was never supposed to uncover. When I finally forced myself downstairs to look, what I found wasn't just unsettling, it unraveled everything I thought I understood. Before I go any further, I want to say I'm grateful you're here listening. If you can, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Seeing those messages reminds me this story isn't being carried alone. And one quick note, certain parts have been dramatized for clarity and emotional depth. Any resemblance to actual people or places is purely accidental. Still, the heart of this story holds a truth that deserves reflection. Tuesdays were meant to be peaceful. After 32 years of piloting commercial flights, Minneapolis to Seattle, Seattle to Denver, Denver and back again, I had come to value the quiet spaces between trips, those hours of stillness before I folded my uniform neatly into its garment bag and returned to the airport for another 3-day run across the map. I stood in the kitchen of our home on Ashford Lane. The 2-story colonial Margaret and I had purchased 23 years earlier when Cassandra was 9 and Felicia just 4. Back when the walls carried the echo of our daughter's laughter, Margaret would hum gently while tending to her herbs near the back window. That version of life feels like it belonged to someone else. Margaret has been gone for a decade now. Felicia disappeared 8 years ago, vanished one cold March night at 19, leaving nothing behind but questions that still hang in the air, and a wound that never quite closed. Now it's just Cassandra and me. My firstborn, 32, sharp-minded, ambitious. She turned the basement into a jewelry workshop and built a business that would have filled her mother with pride. She left at 7 that morning for her downtown gallery, like she always does on Tuesdays, brushing a kiss across my cheek and reminding me again to take my vitamins. The house feels oversized for 2 people, yet it's the only place that still feels like ours. I refilled my mug with another pour of dark roast from that little shop on Hennepin Avenue and glanced at the clock mounted above the stove, 7:34 a.m. My Seattle departure wasn't scheduled until later that afternoon. There was more than enough time to throw clothes into a suitcase, skim through the latest weather briefings, maybe even ring Steven about our Friday golf plans. Then my phone started vibrating across the counter. Gary Thompson's name flashed on the screen. For 6 years straight, Gary had shown up every Tuesday to cut the grass, reliable as sunrise, and he never called unless something wasn't right. "Mr. Hayes." His tone carried that hesitant politeness people use when they're worried they're about to intrude. "I hate to bother you, sir, but there's something you ought to hear." I lowered myself into a chair beside the coffee maker. After decades in a cockpit, you develop an ear for tension in someone's voice. "What is it, Gary?" "I'm out front mowing, and I keep picking up this sound," he said. "It's coming from your basement, I think. Sounds like someone crying." The low growl of the mower idled behind him. "It's been happening for a few minutes now. Real faint, like whoever it is doesn't want to be noticed." I crossed to the window. Gary stood next to his mower, phone pressed tight against his ear, his gaze fixed on the narrow basement windows that sat just above the soil line. Cassandra had driven off about 45 minutes earlier. Aside from me, the house was empty. "I'll take a look," I told him. The staircase to the basement groaned beneath my steps, 16 of them, worn smooth from years of use. I'd gone up and down those stairs thousands of times. Today, each step seemed to press harder against my chest. At the bottom, I paused and listened carefully. Silence. Only the steady hum of the furnace and the faint electric buzz from the fluorescent lights overhead. Cassandra's jewelry studio occupied the far corner of the basement, a space we had transformed together 5 years ago. I'd helped her brush the walls in a soft dove gray, mounted track lighting along the ceiling, built sturdy shelves for beads, wire, and stones. We'd spent weeks working shoulder to shoulder, laughing in a way we hadn't since her childhood. I pushed open the studio door. At first glance, everything appeared exactly as it should. The main work table sat in the center, about 25 by 15 feet, tools laid out with her usual precision. Glass display cases lined the walls, showcasing silver pendants and delicate gold chains, custom pieces that had earned her a devoted following. And yet, something felt off. I stepped closer to the table and noticed a drinking glass sitting near the edge, beads of condensation still clinging to the surface. I reached out and touched it. It was cold, recently poured. The clock on the wall showed 7:43. Cassandra had walked out the door at 7 sharp. I cleared my throat and let my gaze travel slowly around the studio. The compact sink in the corner caught my attention, its metal handle still damp. A trace of lavender soap hung faintly in the air, fresh enough to notice. Then I saw it, the back wall. It was painted the same dove gray as the rest of the room, but something about it didn't sit right. The surface looked smoother, newer, like it had been repaired and coated again not long ago. I stepped closer, laid my palm against it, and tapped gently with my knuckles. The echo that came back was hollow. "Mr. Hayes?" I turned toward the voice. Gary stood at the bottom of the stairs now, his work gloves twisting nervously between his hands. He wasn't a man given to wild assumptions. "Did you find anything?" he asked. "Just the studio," I said. The answer sounded thin, even to me. "I know what I heard," Gary insisted quietly. "A woman crying, real soft, like she didn't want anyone to know she was there." His eyes flicked toward the back wall before settling on me again. "Think it could have traveled from somewhere else? Maybe a neighbor?" "Maybe," I replied, but neither of us truly bought that explanation. A car door slammed outside. A second later, the sharp rhythm of heels crossed the kitchen floor above us. Cassandra. She appeared at the top of the stairs, eyebrows lifting when she saw both of us. "Dad? Gary? What's going on?" "Gary thought he heard something while he was mowing," I explained. "We came down to check." "Crying," Gary added, almost apologetic. Cassandra let out a small laugh. "Oh, that was probably my podcast. I stayed up late finishing a custom order and had a true crime episode playing. Those interviews can get pretty emotional. I must have forgotten to turn it off before I came upstairs. It's set on a timer." Gary's posture loosened almost instantly. "Well, that makes sense," he said with visible relief. "I'm really sorry if I scared you," Cassandra added gently, brushing his arm in reassurance. "Dad's always saying I push myself too hard." "What made you come back?" I asked. "I thought you had an appointment this morning." "I do," she replied smoothly. "But I left my presentation portfolio here. I can't pitch a major commission without photos." She turned toward the stairs. "I'll just grab it and I'll get it." I cut in, stepping ahead of her. "Where is it?" For the briefest second, something shifted in her expression. Red leather binder, on the shelf by the window. I found it where she said, brought it back, and placed it in her hands. She thanked Gary again, apologizing one more time for the confusion. From the kitchen window, I watched her Audi glide down Ashford Lane and disappear around the corner. Outside, Gary restarted the mower, the steady roar filling the morning air once more. I should have gone upstairs and packed for Seattle. Instead, I found myself heading back down those basement steps. The room hadn't changed, but I had. The lavender scent was still fresh, the condensation still clung to the glass, and the water inside remained cold. Cassandra hadn't been working late. I'd heard her come home around 6. If she'd gone back downstairs afterward, I would have noticed. The 5th stair always groaned loud enough to wake the dead. I crossed to the back wall and knocked again. Hollow, unmistakably hollow. My phone vibrated in my hand. A text from Cassandra. "Thanks for covering, Dad. Love you." Covering. I typed back. "Love you too." But as I stood there holding that chilled glass, Gary's quiet words replayed in my mind. A woman crying, softly, like she didn't want to be found. I wanted to accept her explanation. More than anything, I wanted to trust my daughter, but the tone in her voice hadn't matched the brightness of her smile. and that glass of water was telling a story she wasn't. Rest wouldn't come. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom Margaret and I had shared for almost 20 years before she passed. The blue light of the clock on the nightstand blinked forward. 11:47 p.m., then 12 o'clock, then 1:15. Beyond the windows, the wind moved softly through the oak trees lining Ashford Lane, a sound that once eased me to sleep after long flights across changing time zones. But tonight it wasn't soothing. It felt aware, watchful, almost waiting. The silence wrapped around me like heavy velvet, thick and intentional, as though the house itself was pausing to listen. At 2:15 a.m., I heard it, a subtle creak from downstairs. Not the random settling of wood, but the careful, restrained shift of an old house reacting to someone trying not to be heard. My hand drifted toward the lamp, then stopped halfway. If someone Cassandra maybe was awake below, I didn't want to signal that I was too. I should have gotten up. I should have eased down the 16 steps and found out what was happening in the basement at that hour. But I remained still. I listened to the thud of my heartbeat and wondered when I had become the kind of father who hesitated to face his own daughter. Margaret would have known what to do. The thought came uninvited, as it often did even a decade later. She never wavered. She understood people the way I understood instruments and altitude readings. When 7-year-old Cassandra insisted she hadn't shattered the living room lamp, Margaret saw the truth before a word formed. When 16-year-old Felicia slipped out to a party, Margaret was already waiting in the kitchen, certain she would climb back through her window at 2 in the morning. "Look after our girls, Chris," Margaret had whispered during her final weeks, her fingers trembling inside mine, her voice already slipping away. "They can't do this without you. Promise me." And I did. God help me. I gave her my word, but did I truly honor it? Or did I simply move through the same house as my daughters, lost in flight rotations, shopping lists, and the mechanics of daily life, unaware of what was quietly taking shape beneath my own roof? Margaret would have pierced straight through whatever was unfolding in that basement. She would have held Cassandra's gaze and known instantly whether truth or deception stood before her. I never possessed that instinct. I relied on readings, reports, hard evidence, things that could be measured and confirmed. But how do you measure truth when the only evidence is a tightening in your chest? When every instinct is whispering something you refuse to accept? The past surged back without warning. 8 years ago, March 15th, Felicia was 19, sharp, imaginative, full of momentum. She had just secured a freelance contract with a New York design firm, the kind of opportunity that could have carried her far beyond Minneapolis. I remember the night she vanished. Tuesday, shortly after dinner, she was texting someone, a faint smile tugging at her lips as she slipped on her jacket. "Dad," she called from the hallway, "I'm meeting Sophie for coffee." Sophie Morgan, her closest friend from community college. Nothing unusual about that. "Drive safe," I answered, barely lifting my eyes. "Don't be late. You've got that meeting tomorrow." "I won't. Love you. Love you too." Those were the last words we ever exchanged. By morning, her car was missing. Her bed hadn't been slept in. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I called Sophie immediately. She hadn't seen her. No plans. No messages. By noon, I'd filed a missing persons report. By evening, authorities confirmed no bank transactions. Her phone's last signal traced to Oakwood Avenue. But when officers arrived, there was nothing. No trace. Cassandra had been shattered, or so it seemed. She printed flyers, posted online, and contacted everyone on Felicia's phone. For weeks, she barely rested. "Maybe she just needs space," Cassandra said quietly one night, a month later. "You remember how Felicia could be. Maybe she accepted the job sooner than planned and skipped the goodbye." I needed that explanation to be true, so I held on to it. But lying awake now, the overlooked fragments returned. Details I had brushed aside. 3 years ago, I woke around 2 a.m. to faint movement from the basement. Maybe even voices too soft to confirm. The next morning, I mentioned it to Cassandra. "That was me," she replied without hesitation. "New equipment. I'm trying to keep the noise down." It sounded reasonable. 2 years ago, our grocery expenses suddenly doubled. "Client presentations," she explained. "Refreshments. It's part of the business." That felt logical too. Last year, I found her in the kitchen well past midnight, arranging sandwiches, fruit, and bottles of water onto a tray. "Working late," she said with a light smile. "Big deadline." I stood there as she carried it toward the basement steps. Something inside me tightened, but I stayed silent. Now those memories aligned like pieces of a case file. Gary mentioned he'd heard crying, the freshly painted section of wall, the untouched glass of water, the scent of lavender soap, noises after midnight, food vanished downstairs, and underneath all of it, the question I had never dared form. What if Felicia never left? What if she had been here all along, 20 feet beneath my bedroom, separated from me by nothing more than a floor, a ceiling, and my own unwillingness to see? I jerked upright. The room seemed to sway. My hands clutched the mattress, trembling, not only from fear, but from something far worse. Recognition. A slow, dreadful certainty spreading through me. I snatched my phone and opened the Notes app. Tuesday, 7:34 a.m. Crying from the basement. Tuesday, 7:45 a.m. Glass of fresh water. Tuesday, 7:45 a.m. The wall was recently painted. Tuesday, 7:50 a.m. Lavender soap in the air. 3 years earlier, basement noises at 2 a.m. 2 years earlier, grocery costs doubled. 1 year earlier, food taken downstairs. I stared at the growing list until my vision swam and tears distorted the screen. How had I managed to justify every warning sign? How had I persuaded myself that nothing was wrong? How had I let Felicia down so completely? My thumb hovered over Stephen Harper's contact, my oldest friend, an attorney, the one person who would know how to handle something like this. But it was nearly 3 in the morning, and fear held me still. Fear of being mistaken. Fear of being right. Fear of what the truth would reveal about Cassandra and about me. I placed the phone on the nightstand. Tomorrow, I decided, daylight would bring clarity. There had to be a reasonable explanation, because the alternative that my daughter had been trapped beneath my bedroom for 8 years while I slept peacefully above was too monstrous to confront. I lay there until dawn finally broke. 2 days later, while Cassandra attended her gallery opening, I crossed a line I never thought I would. I searched through her documents. It was Thursday afternoon. She'd left around noon for an event expected to last until 5, maybe 6. That gave me a window long enough to confirm my fears or expose myself as a delusional old man. I paused at the doorway of her home office, once Margaret's sewing room, a sleek glass desk, filing cabinets, shelves of design books arranged meticulously by color, immaculate, controlled, just like Cassandra. I stepped inside, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The filing cabinet was unlocked. I slid open the bottom drawer and found an accordion folder labeled Household Grocery in her precise handwriting. I carried it to the desk and began spreading the receipts across the glass surface. There were hundreds of receipts, carefully sorted by date, stretching back 2 full years. I selected one at random. Target, March 2nd, 2024. $187.43. The receipt ran 2 pages long. 12 cans of soup, 6 boxes of pasta, 3 bags of rice, 2 cases of bottled water, 24 bottles each, granola bars, peanut butter, 2 bottles of multivitamins, then toiletries, shampoo, conditioner, 3 tubes of toothpaste, deodorant, and at the bottom, without fail, always ultra-thin pads, size 2, $24.99. My eyes locked on that final line. Cassandra had gotten an IUD 5 years ago. I knew because she mentioned it when we were reviewing her health coverage. So why was she purchasing menstrual products month after month? I grabbed another receipt. Cub Foods, March 9th, 2022. $223.17. The same pattern. Produce, canned food, bread, eggs, more vitamins, more toiletries, and again Tampax Pearl Regular, $19.99. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone and began snapping photos of every receipt. Feel later. Document now. The evidence was unmistakable. Every single week for 2 years, Cassandra had spent between $170 and $230. Identical items each time. non-perishable food, basic hygiene supplies, vitamins, feminine products, but Cassandra hardly ate at home. Most evenings she attended client dinners. Food in our refrigerator spoiled regularly, unless someone else was consuming it. I opened the calculator. $200 a week, 52 weeks, 2 years, $20,800. Then I uncovered another envelope. Amazon orders. Women's clothing, size small. Cassandra wore a medium, a yoga mat, resistance bands. June 2023. Cassandra had never practiced yoga. Paperback novels. August 2023. Mysteries, psychological thrillers. Cassandra didn't read fiction. She flipped through design journals, nothing more. Sketchbooks, graphite pencils. November 2023. But Cassandra worked with jewelry, metals and stones, not illustration. Individually, each order was insignificant, easy to overlook, but together they formed a pattern too deliberate to ignore. Someone else was being provided for in this house, someone who required regular meals, clothing in a size small, books to pass the time, art supplies to fill empty hours, someone who sketched, someone who fit Felicia perfectly. The realization hit like a physical blow. I dropped into Cassandra's desk chair, staring at the receipts spread across the glass surface, as if they might rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. At 5:47 p.m., I heard Cassandra's car pull into the driveway. By then, everything had been returned to its place. Receipts neatly stacked, folders aligned, the drawer closed as though untouched. I was in the kitchen, finishing dinner. Chicken marsala, her favorite. The kitchen carried a cozy, familiar warmth in the air. She stepped inside glowing with excitement. Dad, 3 salesmen and Mrs. Peterson just ordered a custom piece. My best opening so far. That's incredible, sweetheart. I passed her a glass of wine. Tell me all about it. For the next 20 minutes, she went on about clients, the praise she received, and all the networking possibilities ahead. She seemed completely normal, almost too innocent. We finally sat down for dinner. I let her settle in before I spoke. I've been wanting to ask you something. You've been holding client gatherings at the house, haven't you? She glanced up and hesitated. What are you talking about? Well, the shopping. Our grocery bills climbed quite a bit. I assumed you were hosting people here. Just a flicker of a pause. Then that smile. Oh, definitely. Private showings for VIP clients. They expect wine, quality cheeses, elegant crackers. It costs a lot, but it covers itself in the end. Her tone stayed silky, steady with confidence, yet her fingers were clenched so tightly around the fork her knuckles had turned pale. That tracks, I replied. Although I did notice quite a few personal items on the receipts, feminine products. Bought in bulk, Dad. No pause this time. Buying in bulk saves money. You know how strict I am about budgets. I thought you had an IUD. 3 long seconds of quiet. I do. Her voice shifted, more measured now. But I keep extra supplies for clients. Women sometimes need things unexpectedly. It's just good hosting. On the surface, every explanation sounded completely logical. Still, her knuckles hadn't regained their color. A thin vein throbbed at her temple. You're very considerate, I said. She eased a little. I try to be. We wrapped up dinner discussing her commissions and the weather. Safe, ordinary topics. Everything felt perfectly routine. She headed upstairs at 9, worn out. Big day tomorrow. Good night, Dad. Good night, sweetheart. I waited half an hour. Then I made my way down to the basement. The studio door was shut, but not locked. I slipped in quietly, letting the darkness guide me toward the back wall. I placed my palm against the newly painted surface. Cool, firm, empty. I tapped lightly. The knock returned dull, swallowed. I leaned closer, pressing my ear flat against it, holding my breath for 30 seconds. Silence. And then so faint I almost doubted it. The sound of quick, shallow breathing. A person fighting with everything in them to stay silent. Felicia, I breathed out. The sound of breathing cut off instantly. Silence flooded the space, thick and choking. Felicia, I tried again, barely louder. If you can hear me. Footsteps echoed from upstairs. Cassandra's bedroom door creaked open. I pulled away from the wall, my heart pounding violently, and hurried toward the exit. Behind me, the breathing returned. Quicker now. Shaky, almost like muffled sobs. I slipped out and climbed the stairs. That night, stretched out on my bed, I stared blankly at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd decide who to call, how to handle this, and how to get help. But one thought drowned out everything else. My daughter had been 20 feet away. For 8 years, she'd been right here. And I was going to bring her out. Stephen called Thursday afternoon, just as I was cramming clothes into my overnight bag for my flight to Seattle. Chris. His voice sounded tight, strained in a way I had never heard, not once in 2 decades of friendship. We need to talk. Now. I froze mid-fold, a shirt dangling from my hands. What's going on? It's about the trust fund you set up for Felicia. There's something you have to see. My stomach sank. What kind of something? Not over the phone. How soon can you get here? I checked my watch. 2:30. Boarding started at 6. 20 minutes. I'll be here. Stephen's firm was on the 12th floor of the IDS Tower in downtown Minneapolis. All glass walls, steel finishes, and quiet power. I'd walked into that office countless times after Margaret passed. When I revised my will. When we established Felicia's trust right after her 16th birthday. But today, standing inside the elevator, every second felt painfully slow. Stephen was waiting for me at reception himself, and that alone tightened something in my chest. Normally, his assistant took care of visitors. He looked older than I remembered. More gray threaded through his temples. The lines on his face cut deeper. Thanks for coming, he said, gripping my hand. The handshake was steady, but his palm felt slick. Come on back. Inside his office, he shut the door and lowered the blinds before turning to me. I took the chair. He flipped open a thick file and began laying papers across the desk. Bank statements, transaction histories, spreadsheets crowded with rows of numbers. You remember the trust Margaret created for Felicia? He asked. $500,000. From her insurance payout and savings. Felicia was meant to receive it at 21, but after she disappeared, I appointed Cassandra as temporary trustee. I swallowed. She was responsible. I believed it was protected. My voice wavered. I believed it was safe. From a legal standpoint, you handled it correctly, Stephen replied with care. But Cassandra has been pulling funds out, significant amounts. He pushed a spreadsheet across the desk, rows marked in yellow and red. This spans 8 years, beginning March 2016, 2 weeks after Felicia went missing. The figures swam in front of me as I tried to focus. March 28, 2016, $50,000. April 15, 2016, $50,000. May 3, 2016, $50,000. $50,000 at a time. 3 withdrawals in 3 months, Stephen said quietly. Each one listed as debt repayment to Derek Hamilton. The name tugged at my memory. Her boyfriend. They were together for a while. She transferred him $150,000 from Felicia's trust, Stephen said. And that's just the start. He laid down another document. This one showed smaller withdrawals, scattered but constant, 2,000 here, 5,000 there. It accumulates, he said, running his finger down the column of totals, around 350,000 over 8 years. My grip tightened around the arms of the chair. For what? Stephen slid a stack of receipts and invoices toward me. According to Cassandra's filings, the money was allocated to several uses. $100,000 to a company called J. Morrison Construction out of Iowa, marked as home renovation. My breath stalled. Renovation? We haven't renovated a thing. I already looked into it, Stephen said. No permits, no inspections, nothing filed under your address in more than a decade. The office seemed to tilt. I steadied myself against the desk. Another $80,000 categorized as operational expenses. Food, supplies, equipment. $70,000 to launch her gallery, which appears legitimate, and nearly $100,000 divided among savings and investment accounts in her name. She told me the gallery was built on loans, I said quietly. Then she wasn't telling you the truth. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I stared back down at the spreadsheet. J. Morrison Construction, Iowa, $100,000. Who the hell is J. Morrison? I don't know yet, Stephen admitted. But $100,000 in cash for renovations that never took place? He leaned back slowly in his chair. Chris, we have to consider the possibility that Cassandra knows exactly what happened to Felicia. The thought tasted bitter as I said it aloud. That she's been deceiving me for 8 years. Stephen didn't interrupt, didn't disagree, so I told him everything. About Gary hearing crying. About the water glass that left no condensation ring. About the grocery receipts that didn't make sense. About the fresh paint on the basement wall and how it sounded hollow when I knocked. He sat there without interrupting, his face growing heavier with every detail. When I finally stopped talking, he let out a slow breath. I need to ask you this carefully, he said. Do you believe Cassandra could have harmed Felicia? No, I answered immediately. Then quieter. I don't know. If she's had access to that kind of money, he continued. If she hired someone from out of state, if she's been purchasing supplies for years. He didn't finish the sentence. My throat felt raw. Here's what we're going to do, Stephen said, his tone shifting into something focused and deliberate. I'm bringing in a forensic accountant. We'll trace every dollar. We'll locate Derek Hamilton, and we'll identify who Jay Morrison really is. How long will that take? A week, maybe sooner. For a week, I repeated, pushing myself to my feet. Felicia could be. Chris, he cut in, standing and gripping my shoulder firmly. Do not confront Cassandra. Not yet. If Felicia is alive and you tip Cassandra off. I nodded. I understood. You go home, he said, and you act like everything is normal. Can you actually pull that off? He asked. I imagined Cassandra sitting across from me at the dinner table, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. I can, I said. He passed me photocopies of the bank records. Keep these somewhere safe. Later, I sat alone in my car, the engine still off. The papers spread across my lap. $500,000. Margaret's final gift to Felicia. Gone. Drained away piece by piece. J. Morrison Construction, Iowa. $100,000. What exactly had Cassandra built with that money, and where had my daughter been while it was happening? I turned the key in the ignition. Seattle could wait. Tomorrow, I will start with J. Morrison, and I would find out what he constructed inside my house. Friday morning at 8:15, Dorothy Green knocked on my front door. I had just returned from Seattle, eyes sunken, body heavy with exhaustion, but the expression on her face, pale, anxious, made it clear sleep was the last thing on the agenda. Mr. Hayes, her voice trembled. I need to show you something. I should have spoken up years ago, but I was too afraid. I stepped aside. Come in. Dorothy had been my neighbor for 15 years, a close friend of Margaret's, the woman who'd bring casseroles after her death, now 72, a widow, plagued by insomnia that kept her awake most nights. She perched on the sofa, clutching a canvas bag, eyes flicking nervously toward the door. I'm a light sleeper, Mr. Hayes, she admitted. Have been ever since Robert passed. She drew in a shaky breath. Over the years, I started noticing things. What kind of things? I see lights down in your basement late at night, long after the rest of the house is dark, and I see Cassandra heading down there, carrying dishes, bags, whatever she needs. She paused. It all began 8 years ago, right after Felicia vanished. Dorothy pulled 3 spiral notebooks from her bag, thick and worn at the edges. I began keeping track in 2017. The pattern never changed. I opened the first notebook. Handwritten notes, each dated and time-stamped. March 15, 2017, 2:30 a.m. Cassandra exited the basement, carrying a tray of empty dishes. July 22, 2021, 11:45 p.m. Heard faint crying coming from the Hayes' house. Lasted 10 minutes. October 3, 2023, 3:15 a.m. Cassandra made 3 trips to the basement, bringing pillows, blankets, and books. Entry after entry stretched across years, hundreds of them. In the early days, 2 or 3 times a week, Dorothy said softly. By 2018, 4 or 5 times, always in the dead of night. But the expression on her face, pale, anxious, made it clear sleep was the last thing on the agenda. Mr. Hayes, her voice trembled. I need to show you something. I should have spoken up years ago, but I was too afraid. I stepped aside. Come in. Dorothy had been my neighbor for 15 years, a close friend of Margaret's, the woman who'd bring casseroles after her death, now 72, a widow, plagued by insomnia that kept her awake most nights. She perched on the sofa, clutching a canvas bag, eyes flicking nervously toward the door. "I'm a light sleeper, Mr. Hayes," she admitted. "Have been ever since Robert passed." She drew in a shaky breath. "Over the years I started noticing things." "What kind of things?" "I see lights down in your basement late at night, long after the rest of the house is dark, and I see Cassandra heading down there, carrying dishes, bags, whatever she needs." She paused. "It all began 8 years ago, right after Felicia vanished." Dorothy pulled 3 spiral notebooks from her bag, thick and worn at the edges. "I began keeping track in 2017. The pattern never changed." I opened the first notebook. Handwritten notes, each dated and time-stamped. March 15, 2017, 2:30 a.m. Cassandra exited the basement, carrying a tray of empty dishes. July 22, 2021, 11:45 p.m. Heard faint crying coming from the Hayes' house. Lasted 10 minutes. October 3, 2023. 3:15 a.m. Cassandra made 3 trips to the basement, bringing pillows, blankets, and books. Entry after entry stretched across years, hundreds of them. In the early days, 2 or 3 times a week, Dorothy said softly. By 2018, 4 or 5 times. Always in the dead of night. November 8, 2023, 11:52 p.m. A dark sedan rolled into my driveway. A man stepped out, lugging a large box. Cassandra met him at the basement door. They exchanged a few words. He handed over the box and left. "Who was that?" I asked. "I don't know," Dorothy replied, "but I've seen that car 3 times over the past year. Always at night. Always delivering something. Derek Hamilton. It had to be him." "There are 47 videos," she said. "Enough to show the pattern. She's been going down there almost every night for 8 years. Careful. Always careful, to make sure you never saw a thing." My hands shook as I ejected the USB drive. 8 years of proof. 8 years of my neighbor watching, too afraid to intervene. Why tell me now? "Because Tuesday, I overheard your landscaper on the phone. He'd heard crying too. And I realized, if there's another witness." Tears streamed down her cheeks. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Dorothy. You've been braver than you know. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to uncover what my daughter has been hiding, and I'm going to make sure she never hurts anyone again." After Dorothy left, I sat alone. Her notebook spread across the coffee table. 8 years of careful records. Meticulous. Irrefutable. I replayed the videos. Cassandra carrying bags. Cassandra checking my windows. That car delivers boxes. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra. "Morning, Dad. Client lunch until 3. See you tonight. Love you. Love you." Did she mean it? Or was I just another mark in her deception? I opened Dorothy's first notebook. Inside the cover, written in careful script. "If something happens to me, give this to the police. Dorothy Green." She had been quietly building a case, preparing for the moment someone would finally believe her. That day was today. I added Dorothy's notebooks and videos to my growing file, alongside Gary's testimony, the grocery receipts, Stephen's trust fund documents. 8 years of suspicious activity, finally forming a picture. Dorothy's voice whispered in my mind. "What do you think she's hiding down there, Mr. Hayes?" I stared at the USB drive, at the stacks of notebooks chronicling 8 years of late-night movements. Deep down, I already knew. My daughter. My Felicia. She had been there all along, 20 feet beneath my bedroom, concealed behind fresh paint, hollow walls, and a web of meticulously crafted lies. And tomorrow, I will get her out, no matter the cost, no matter who stood in my way, even if that person was my own daughter. The LinkedIn notification buzzed at 2:30 p.m. on Friday. I had just returned from Dorothy's house, my mind still reeling from 8 years of detailed notes and blurry security footage. Riley Summers, graphic designer at Digital Arts Studio, Minneapolis. Subject, Felicia Hayes. "I need to speak with you urgently." I froze at the name. Riley Summers, Felicia's closest friend from the University of Minnesota. The one who had called me every week for the first 6 months after Felicia vanished, desperate for any update. The one who stopped calling after a year, her voice breaking in her final message. I can't keep doing this to myself, Mr. Hayes. I'm so sorry, she said. I hadn't heard from her in 7 years. Her message was short. I've been looking into Felicia's disappearance on my own for the past 6 months. I found something. Can we meet today? Hey, I'm in Minneapolis. I called immediately. She picked up on the first ring. Mr. Hayes. Riley. My voice was tight. What did you find? Not over the phone, she replied quickly. Can you meet me at Riverside Brew on Hennepin Avenue at 4? I glanced at the clock. An hour and a half. I'll be there. Riverside Brew sat tucked into a quiet corner off Hennepin, the kind of spot where the espresso machine hissed gently, and the afternoon crowd thinned by 3. I arrived early, taking a table in the back, away from the windows. Riley walked in at exactly 4. I recognized her immediately. Same dark curls, same brisk stride, but older now, sharper, 27 maybe. A leather messenger bag slung over one shoulder, an iPad in hand. Up, Mr. Hayes. She slid into the seat across from me, eyes scanning the room once before settling on mine. Thank you for coming. You said you found something. She nodded, placing the iPad on the table between us. I need you to understand something first. Felicia and I were roommates from sophomore through senior year. She was my best friend. When she disappeared, her voice faltered. She drew in a breath. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago. It cost me $8,000. He didn't uncover much, but he did find this. Riley tapped the iPad, and a website appeared. Cassandra Hayes Designs. I recognized it immediately. Cassandra's jewelry line. She had launched it 3 years after Felicia disappeared, claiming grief had inspired her to channel her creativity into something beautiful. The collection featured elegant necklaces, bracelets, rings, minimalist silver and gold, each with intricate engravings. I spoke slowly. I know Cassandra's work. What about it? Riley's jaw tightened. These aren't Cassandra's designs, Mr. Hayes. They're Felicia's. I blinked. What? She swiped to the next screen. A photo of a silver pendant, its delicate vine pattern curling around the edges. This is from Cassandra's 2022 collection. $1,200. Sold out in 3 days. She swiped again. This is a sketch Felicia made in 2015. I found it in a box of her old coursework I'd been keeping. The 2 images sat side by side. The match was undeniable. The curve of the vine, the spacing of the leaves, the way the stem wrapped around the center. Identical. That's one design, I said, my pulse quickening. Could be a coincidence. I thought so too. Riley swiped through 15 more comparisons. 15 pieces from Cassandra Hayes Designs. 15 sketches from Felicia's college portfolio. Every single one matched perfectly. My hands went icy. There's more, Riley said quietly. She zoomed in on the pendant. Look at the engraving right here. I leaned closer. At first I could see only the vine pattern. Then Riley traced her finger along the curve of a leaf, and I noticed it, a tiny, almost invisible F tucked into the negative space. And Felicia used to do that, Riley whispered. Sign her work with a hidden F. Every design had it. I once asked her why she didn't just sign her name outright. She said, if people care enough to look, they'll find me. I stared at the letter. My daughter's signature, hidden in plain sight. 15 designs. Riley's voice shook now. 15 pieces over the past 3 years, each bearing Felicia's hidden F. She's alive, Mr. Hayes. She's been trying to tell us all along. The cafe noise faded. The hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversations, all blurred into static. Where is she? I asked. I don't know. Riley's eyes glistened with unshed tears. But I think Cassandra knows. I told her everything. Gary hearing cries in the basement, the grocery receipts totaling $20,000 over 2 years, Stephen's discovery of the missing trust fund, $500,000 drained in 8 years, and Dorothy's notebooks and surveillance footage showing Cassandra carrying bags into the basement at midnight, week after week. Riley listened the entire time without a word. When I finished, tears were running down her cheeks. She's in the basement, Riley said. Isn't she? I think so. How long? I couldn't say. The number felt impossible. 8 years. Riley pressed her hands to her mouth. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she lifted her gaze to mine. What are you going to do? I thought of the hidden F. 15 times my daughter had tried to reach the world. 15 times she had been ignored. Not anymore. I'm going to bring her home, I said. Riley reached across the table, her hand gripping mine. Then let me help. That night, after Cassandra had gone to bed, I lay awake until I heard her bedroom door close and the soft click of the lock. At exactly 11:30 p.m., I rose and began my careful descent to the basement. This time, I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for my daughter. I had prepared everything earlier while Cassandra was at the gallery. A tape measure, a flashlight, my phone with Steven's number on speed dial. I had called him at 9 and told him what I was about to do. He'd wanted to come, but I said no. If I was wrong, if there was nothing down there, I didn't want to drag him into the wreckage of my paranoia. But I wasn't wrong. I know that now. And before I open this door, before I see what's been hidden from me for 8 years, let me ask you something. Have you ever been this close to the truth, only to be terrified of what you might find? Drop a comment below and tell me, would you open this door? And if this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. A brief disclaimer. This story includes fictionalized elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. If you're not comfortable with that, feel free to exit now. For everyone else, let's see what's waiting on the other side. I descended the basement stairs slowly, each step deliberate, my hand gripping the railing. I paused and listened. The house was silent. Cassandra's bedroom lay directly above the living room, 2 floors up. She was a heavy sleeper. I had time. I opened the studio door and flipped the switch. The fluorescent panels buzzed overhead, flooding the room with harsh white light. Everything looked exactly as it had that Tuesday morning. Cassandra's sketches were pinned in the center of the corkboard, her work precise and deliberate. The silver pendant Riley had shown me in one of those photos now rested on the counter, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. I closed the studio door behind me and retrieved the tape measure. The basement's exterior wall ran along the back of the house. From the base of the stairs to the far end, I measured 40 feet, then I stepped into the studio itself and measured again. The interior length from the door to the back wall came out to 25 feet. 15 feet were missing. I moved to measure the width. The full basement spanned 30 feet. The studio itself was 15 feet across. On the right, the wall was solid poured concrete, the foundation of the house. On the left, drywall, fresh drywall, painted white, smooth and seamless, but it wasn't a structural wall. I pressed my palm against it, cool to the touch. I knocked lightly. The sound that returned was hollow, empty. There was a room behind this wall 15 feet deep, 12 feet wide, roughly 180 square feet, big enough to live in. I swept the flashlight along the surface, searching for seams, hinges, anything that might betray a door. At first, nothing. The wall was unbroken, smooth from edge to edge. Then my beam caught on something near the corner. A tall bookshelf, 6 feet high, pressed flush against the wall. I approached slowly. It was filled with design books, jewelry technique manuals, metalworking guides, and a few art history texts. Heavy, permanent looking. I tried to push it. It didn't budge. Crouching, I aimed the flashlight at the base. Just visible beneath the lowest shelf were 4 small rubber caster wheels, the kind used on a rolling cart, but they weren't rolling. The wheels were secured with metal pins. Beside the left front wheel, half hidden by the wooden frame, a small electronic keypad glowed red, 4 digits, a tiny LED blinking steadily. I froze, pulse hammering in my ears. Cassandra had built a lock, a code. I thought of the receipts, the $100,000 paid to J. Morrison Construction, the basement renovation that had never been permitted, inspected, or recorded anywhere except Steven's files. This was what the money had bought. Not a studio, a prison. I wiped my palms on my jeans and typed the first number that came to mind, 1992, Cassandra's birth year. Read. Incorrect. Felicia's birth year. Read again. The year Margaret died. Read. I sank back on my heels, staring at the keypad. What number would Cassandra choose? What number mattered enough to lock her sister away behind it? And then I knew. 2016, the year Felicia disappeared. I entered the digits slowly. The LED turned green. A soft click echoed from inside the bookshelf as the metal pins released. The shelf rolled forward an inch, smooth as silk. I grabbed the edge and pulled. It slid aside effortlessly, revealing a narrow gap in the wall. Set into the drywall was a steel door, industrial gray, a deadbolt mounted on the outside. The lock was open. I stood frozen, hand hovering over the doorknob, unable to move. My chest felt tight, each breath shallow, my vision blurring at the edges. From the other side of the door, a faint, shallow exhale reached me. Someone was in there. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the cold metal. The breathing was careful, almost deliberate, as if whoever was inside feared making a sound. "Felicia," I whispered. The breathing stopped. 5 seconds of silence. Then the tiniest sound, almost imperceptible, a sharp intake of breath, a sob caught halfway in her throat, and then a voice, weak, hoarse, trembling. "Dad." My knees gave way. I braced myself against the doorframe, hand shaking on the handle. "Felicia." My voice cracked. "Baby, is that you?" A sob burst through the door. Small, broken, carrying 8 years of pain. "Dad." Her voice dissolved into crying. "Dad, you came. I knew you would." I reached for the deadbolt, ready to throw the door open, but then I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, moving toward the staircase. Cassandra was awake. I froze, hands still on the lock. If I opened it now, if Cassandra came down and caught me here, she would lie. She would twist the story. She would call the police, claim I'd broken into her studio, that I was delusional, dangerous. I couldn't risk it, not when I was this close. I pressed my forehead against the door. "Felicia," I whispered urgently. "I'm going to get help. I'm calling the police right now. I will get you out of here. I promise. Please." Her voice barely carried. "Please don't leave me alone again." "I won't," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm not leaving. I'm just going upstairs to call," I whispered. "You hear me? I'm getting you out tonight." She didn't answer, only cried. Hands trembling, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring. 911. "What's your emergency?" "My name is Christopher Hayes. I'm at 2847 Ashford Lane, Minneapolis. My daughter, she's been held in my basement for 8 years. She's alive. I need officers here immediately." "Sir, can you confirm your address?" 2847 Ashford Lane, please." "She's locked in a room. I can hear her. She's alive. Officers are on the way, sir. Stay on the line with me." I nodded, hand still pressed to the steel door, even though she couldn't see me. On the other side, Felicia had gone quiet again. "Felicia," I whispered. "I'm here," she said softly. "Help is coming." "Okay." I closed my eyes, leaning my weight against the door, palm flat against the cold metal, as if I could touch her through it. "Dad," she said after a moment. "Yeah, baby. You found me." My chest tightened. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face, hand pressed to the door like a lifeline. I was still in the basement, hand on the steel door, when the doorbell rang upstairs. My first thought, the police can't be here this fast. My second thought, Cassandra is awake. I raced up the stairs and peered through the peephole. Derek Hamilton stood on the porch, face pale, haunted. I yanked the door open. "Derek, what are you doing here?" He looked past me into the house, eyes darting nervously from side to side. He was thin, thinner than I remembered, hands trembling as he clutched a worn messenger bag. "I heard you went to see a lawyer," he said, voice low and urgent. "I heard you've been asking questions, Mr. Hayes. I need to tell you everything before the police get here. Please." Then I heard it too, the faint wail of sirens growing louder in the distance. Derek heard it as well. "I've got maybe 10 minutes, he said. "Maybe less. Please let me explain." I pulled him inside and shut the door. Derek sank into the armchair in the living room, body trembling. I stood over him, fists clenched, every instinct screaming to throw him out. But I didn't. I needed to hear this. 8 years ago, he began, voice shaking. I made the worst mistake of my life. Cassandra asked me to help with something. She said it was just a prank, a lesson for Felicia about humility. I was stupid enough to believe her. What did you do? I asked, my voice cold. Derek looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I owed $45,000 in gambling debts. Cassandra knew. She promised that if I helped her, she'd cover it all. I said nothing, waiting. The plan, he continued, was to stage a fake car accident, to scare Felicia, make her think she'd hit someone. Cassandra said it would only last one night, that we'd tell her the truth the next morning, but we never did. He pulled a USB drive from his bag and placed it on the coffee table between us. It's all on here, he said. The recordings, the messages, the bank transfers, Cassandra admitting the accident was fake, my confession, everything. I stared at the drive, hands trembling. Tell me what happened that night, I said. Derek took a shaky breath. I rented an old Honda Civic, bought a mannequin and fake blood from a costume shop. Cassandra had everything set up already. She'd been texting Felicia from a burner phone, pretending to be a friend, asking her to meet on Oakwood Avenue, a back road. No cameras, no traffic. I felt sick. Felicia drove out there around midnight, Derek said. I placed the mannequin on the road. She panicked. Cassandra appeared a minute later and told her she'd killed someone, said his name was Thomas Whitmore. I showed up afterward, pretending to be an off-duty cop. There was no investigation. It was all fake. Derek's voice broke. It's been 8 years, I said. I know, he whispered, burying his face in his hands. I know, he told me the rest. How Cassandra had paid off his debt in small installments, 500 here, 1,000 there. Never all at once, keeping him dependent. How she'd threatened him. If you say anything, you'll go to prison too, he said, voice hollow. How she'd isolated him, cut him off from his family, convinced him that they were both trapped in this together. She made me believe we were protecting Felicia, Derek admitted. He said that if the truth came out, Felicia would go to prison for killing that man. It sounds insane now, but back then I believed her. 3 years ago, Derek had started to doubt. He'd looked up the name Thomas Whitmore and found nothing. He'd seen Felicia once through a crack in the basement door, thin, hollow-eyed, hair long and matted, and the guilt had nearly destroyed him. So he started recording secretly, Cassandra's admissions, her threats, her plans. He'd saved everything on the USB drive and hidden it in a storage locker across town. Last week, Derek said, I saw Cassandra at a cafe. She was laughing with a client, acting like everything was normal, and I realized she's never going to stop. She's going to keep Felicia down there forever, unless someone stops her. The sirens were louder now. Close. Derek stood. I'm turning myself in tonight. I'll tell the police everything. I deserve whatever sentence I get, but please, Mr. Hayes, save Felicia. Don't let my cowardice ruin her life any more than it already has. I looked at him, this thin, broken man who had helped lock my daughter away for 8 years, and I didn't know what to feel. Rage, pity, disgust, all at once, but I took the USB drive. You're doing the right thing now, I said quietly. That counts for something. Derek shook his head. It doesn't make up for 8 years. Through the window, the red and blue lights of a police cruiser splashed across the driveway. Derek saw them too. He took a deep breath and walked toward the door. Tell Felicia, he said without looking back. I'm sorry. 20 minutes later, Derek was gone, arrested, and I was standing in my basement when Detective Linda Bennett arrived, staring at the steel door hidden behind the bookshelf. Mr. Hayes, she said quietly, I need you to prepare yourself for what we're about to find in there. I nodded, but I wasn't listening. I had been ready for 8 years. Detective Bennett was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed and calm, voice steady. Officer Ryan Torres, early 30s, stood beside her with a hand resting on his radio. 2 more officers flanked the studio entrance, faces grim. I had led them down immediately, showing the bookshelf, the keypad, the steel door, and then Cassandra appeared. She came flying down the stairs in her pajamas, hair wild, eyes wide with panic. Dad, what's going on? Why are the police here? Detective Bennett faced her calmly. M. Hayes, we have a warrant to search this property based on credible evidence of unlawful imprisonment. Cassandra's face was drained of color. That's ridiculous. There's nothing down here except my studio. Then you won't mind if we take a look, Officer Torres said. Cassandra's jaw tightened. I want a lawyer. That's your right, Detective Bennett said. But we're going in now. Officer Torres approached the keypad. I had already told them the code 2016. He entered it slowly. The LED blinked green. The bookshelf slid open with a soft click. Behind it, the steel door stood slightly ajar. I had unlocked it earlier when speaking to Felicia through the metal. Detective Bennett pulled on gloves and pushed the door open. The smell hit us first. The air hit us first. Damp, stale, disinfectant mingling with the unmistakable odor of a space that had been lived in but never aired out. Detective Bennett shone her flashlight across the room, about 15 by 12 feet. On the left, a narrow twin bed with a thin blanket and a single pillow. On the right, a small desk, a lamp, paper and pencils scattered in disarray. In the corner, a portable toilet, a tiny sink, and rudimentary plumbing. The walls were covered, completely covered, with drawings, hundreds of them, layered and pinned over one another. Landscapes, birds, trees, and one face repeated over and over. On the bed, curled against the wall, shielding her eyes from the sudden light, was a woman. Thin, too thin. Brown hair long and tangled, cascading over her shoulders. Skin pale, almost translucent, and yet I knew her. God help me, I knew her. Detective Bennett stepped inside first. Hello, she said gently. My name is Detective Bennett. You're safe now. We're here to help you. The woman lowered her arms slowly, blinking against the brightness. Her gaze swept the room, the officers, the strangers, and finally landed on me. I stepped forward, legs trembling. It was Felicia. 8 years had changed her. She had been 19 the last time I saw her. Healthy, bright-eyed, full of life. Now she is 27. 95 pounds. Cheekbones sharp, eyes sunken and shadowed. But it was her. My daughter. Dad, she whispered. I couldn't speak. I dropped to my knees beside the bed and wrapped my arms around her. She felt so small, so fragile. Felicia, I choked out. Oh God. Felicia, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I whispered, holding her as her whole body trembled. You came, she whispered, voice breaking. I knew you would. I kept drawing you, and I knew someday you'd find me. I held her tighter, sobbing into her shoulder, unable to stop, unable to breathe. All I could do was hold on. Behind us, Detective Bennett turned discreetly, wiping her own eyes. In the hallway, Cassandra stood frozen, pale as paper, mouth open, no sound escaping. 10 minutes later, paramedics arrived with a stretcher. Felicia was too weak to walk. Her legs had atrophied from years of confinement. Her hands shook as she tried to stand. Detective Bennett knelt beside her. Felicia, we need to take you to the hospital. Is that okay? Felicia nodded, but her eyes never left mine. Dad, don't leave me. I gripped her hand. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right there with you. Step by step, the paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher, carrying her out of the room. As we passed the studio, Felicia's gaze fell on Cassandra. She stood against the wall, arms crossed, face streaked with tears. Felicia stared at her for a long moment. Then, in a voice so soft I almost missed it, she whispered, Why, Cassie? Why did you do this? Cassandra didn't answer. She only looked down, sobbing. Officer Torres stepped forward, producing handcuffs. Cassandra Hayes, you're under arrest for unlawful imprisonment, kidnapping, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Cassandra offered no resistance. She allowed them to cuff her and lead her up the stairs. She didn't utter a word as I followed Felicia to the ambulance. The paramedics lifted her inside, and I climbed in beside her. As the doors slid shut, I glanced back at the house, the home I'd lived in for a decade, oblivious to my daughter's imprisonment beneath my feet. Felicia squeezed my hand. Dad. I looked down at her. Her eyes were hollow, haunted, yet unmistakably hers. You found me, she whispered. I nodded, tears streaming freely. I did. Did you ever stop looking? Her question struck me like a blow. The truth. I had. Years ago, I'd given up hope. I'd let her go, but I couldn't admit that. Not now. Not ever. I lied. I never stopped. She closed her eyes briefly, a faint smile crossing her lips, and squeezed my hand again. The ambulance rolled away, lights flashing silently, siren off. I held her hand and thought I had her back. But would she ever forgive me for taking 8 years to do it? At the hospital, under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Felicia began to recount the night that had changed everything. Detective Bennett sat beside me, taking notes, while a nurse monitored Felicia's vitals. Her voice was soft, hesitant, as if speaking the truth aloud might summon the nightmare back. The room smelled of disinfectant and sterile gauze. Machines beeped softly. An IV fed fluids into her arm. The doctor had already delivered the preliminary findings: severe malnutrition, acute vitamin D deficiency, muscle atrophy. Weeks, maybe months, of careful recovery lay ahead. But for now she needed to speak. I squeezed her hand tighter. Detective Bennett leaned forward, her recorder humming softly. "Felicia," she said gently, "we need to understand what happened 8 years ago. Can you tell us about that night?" Felicia swallowed, her voice trembling. "It was March 15th, 2016. I was 19, around 11:45 p.m. I got a voice message." Her eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. "It was from Sophie Morgan. Or at least I thought it was Sophie. She was my best friend back then. The message said, 'Felicia, I need help. Meet me at Riverside Park. It's urgent.'" I glanced at Detective Bennett. She scribbled in her notebook. I didn't hesitate. Felicia continued. "Sophie sounded scared, so I grabbed my keys and drove out. My white Toyota Corolla. I took Oakwood Avenue, a shortcut to the park. The street was dark, empty, no lights." Her voice dropped to a whisper, and then I saw him. "Saw who?" Detective Bennett asked. "A man. He ran into the road. I slammed on the brakes, but I heard a thud. I got out of the car. My voice cracked. There was a man lying on the pavement, blood everywhere. I panicked. I was about to call 911 when Cassandra appeared. I froze. Cassandra was there." Felicia nodded, tears rolling down her face. She appeared out of nowhere. "Felicia, oh my God, what did you do?" she demanded. I told her I hadn't seen him. He just appeared. I said I needed to call for help, but she stopped me. "What exactly did she say?" Detective Bennett asked. "She told me that if I contacted the police, I'd go to prison. Vehicular manslaughter, 20 years, she said." Felicia's hands shook. She checked the man. "He was dead," she said. "There was nothing we could do. She told me to go home and let her handle it." I felt sick. "And you believed her?" "I was frozen, Dad. I couldn't think. I just trusted her." The next morning, Felicia said, "Cassandra showed me a news article on some website I'd never seen before. A fatal hit and run on Oakwood Avenue. A photo of the victim. His name, Thomas Whitmore, 42. Civil engineer, with a wife and 2 kids. Her voice cracked. I thought I had killed him. I squeezed her hand. "You didn't kill anyone, Felicia. I know that now," she whispered. "But for 8 years I believed I had." Detective Bennett leaned in. "What happened after you saw the article?" "Cassandra told me I had to hide, just for a little while, until she figured things out. And then Derek appeared." "Derek Hamilton." Felicia nodded. "He was in a police uniform, and said he was there to take my statement. He asked questions about what time I'd been driving, whether I'd been drinking. I told him I hadn't, but he said a toxicology report would confirm that. He warned I could face 15 to 25 years in prison." "Yes, 2016, Detective Bennett said firmly. "Were you involved in a hit and run in Minneapolis?" "No." Thomas Whitmore's voice sounded hoarse, confused. "I live in Madison, Wisconsin. Never been to Minneapolis that year." "Why are you asking?" Felicia's hand trembled in mine. "Dad? He's alive," she whispered. Disbelief and relief tangled in her voice. Detective Bennett nodded slowly. "You've been lied to, Felicia. The accident was fabricated. There is no case, no death, no charges. You were never in danger of going to prison." Tears streamed down her face. 8 years of fear, isolation, and guilt were finally crumbling away. Felicia buried her face in my shoulder. sobbing quietly. I thought I'd killed someone," she murmured. "I thought I deserved this." "No," I said, holding her tighter. "You were trapped, Felicia. You survived because you're strong, and now you're free." Detective Bennett stepped back, letting us be, her face soft but alert. "We're going to make sure Cassandra is held accountable, and you're going to get the care you need." Felicia lifted her head slightly, her eyes searching mine. "Dad, can we go home soon?" "Yes, baby," I whispered. "We're going home, and you're never hiding again." For the first time in 8 years, she smiled, fragile but real, and I felt a weight lift I hadn't realized I'd been carrying all this time. "I'm sorry, Detective. I don't know what you're talking about. Were you involved in a traffic accident on Oakwood Avenue in Minneapolis on March 15, 2016? "Not a traffic accident, ma'am. I've never even been to Minneapolis. I've lived in Madison my whole life. Can you confirm that you're alive and well, Mr. Whitmore?" The man laughed, nervous, bewildered. "As far as I know, yeah. Detective, what's this about?" Felicia's hand flew to her mouth. A sob tore from her throat. "He's alive. He never died." I pulled her into my arms. "It was all a lie, baby. All of it." Detective Bennett ended the call. "Felicia, you didn't kill anyone. There was no victim. Your sister staged the whole thing." Felicia buried her face in my shoulder and wept. 8 years, she choked out. "She let me think I was a murderer for 8 years. The next day, after Felicia had been admitted for observation and had finally fallen into a deep, exhausted sleep, Detective Bennett called me down to the station. "But we've been digging into the evidence, Mr. Hayes," she said over the phone, "and we found something else, something that proves this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision." I drove to the Minneapolis Police Department, a 4-story building downtown, and followed her to a conference room on the 2nd floor. The table was covered with files, photographs, and documents. Officer Torres was there, along with a bespectacled man in his 50s who introduced himself as Dr. Alan Pierce, a forensic document examiner. "We've been tracing Felicia's car," Detective Bennett said without preamble. "The 2012 Toyota Corolla, white Minnesota plates. And what we found, it's chilling." I leaned closer. Even through the grainy footage, the way she moved, deliberate, careful, it was familiar. Detective Bennett paused the video. "We enhanced the frame," she said. "The face wasn't visible, but the posture, the gait, the slight tilt of her head when she looked around, it matched Cassandra." Dr. Pierce nodded. "Combined with the forgery, it's clear. Cassandra executed this sale. She made it look like Felicia liquidated her car herself. That $3,500 cash, gone, funneled into accounts only she controlled. Felicia had no access, no control." I felt bile rise. 8 years, the staged accident, the basement, the stolen designs, the forged signatures, the manipulated finances. It was all a calculated plan. Cassandra had trapped my daughter, erased her life, and assumed it as her own. Detective Bennett leaned in, her voice firm but calm. "Mr. Hayes, this is why your daughter never left. Every move, every transaction, every step of that staged accident, Cassandra controlled. She built the prison around her, financially, legally, psychologically." I pressed my hands against the table. "So all those bank withdrawals, the payments to Derek, the $100,000 for the basement, was it all part of this?" "Yes," Dr. Pierce said. "The forged signatures, the fake car sale, everything points to premeditation. Cassandra made sure Felicia couldn't escape without leaving a trace that could be challenged. She controlled the narrative completely." Detective Bennett tapped the keyboard, bringing up another file. "And this," she said, "is where it gets worse. The gallery, the jewelry line, all the profits, Felicia's talent, her creations were being laundered through Cassandra's shell company. For years she's been exploiting your daughter, keeping her hidden, profiting from her work, and ensuring no one suspected a thing." I sank into the chair, my mind racing. Every lie, every manipulation, every stolen moment of Felicia's life was accounted for, and it all traced back to one person, Cassandra. I whispered under my breath, a mixture of rage and disbelief. 8 years, she did this all herself. I swallowed hard. the pieces falling into place in a sickening pattern. All those tears, the sympathy, the concern. It was an act? I whispered. Detective Bennett nodded slowly. Yes, Mr. Hayes. She created the illusion of grief to cover her tracks, to make everyone believe your daughter had left voluntarily, to delay suspicion, to manipulate everyone around her, including you. I pressed my face into my hands. 8 years. 8 years of deception. The staged accident, the locked basement, the stolen designs, the falsified financial documents, the hidden studio, the silence of neighbors, the painstakingly falsified evidence, all calculated, all deliberate, Dr. Pierce added. The DMV records, the partial fingerprint, the timing of the sale, everything points to premeditation. She wanted Felicia removed completely, and she had a plan to control the narrative from the very beginning. My throat tightened. She planned this before it even started. She knew what she wanted, and she made it happen. And I didn't see it. Detective Bennett placed a steady hand on mine. Mr. Hayes, you didn't see it, because it was meant to be invisible. 8 years of planning can hide in plain sight if executed with patience and control, which is exactly what she did. But now we have evidence. Felicia is safe, and Cassandra will face the consequences of her actions. I exhaled shakily, a mixture of relief and lingering rage coursing through me. For the first time in years, the nightmare felt like it was finally ending. But the scars of what she had done would never disappear. I froze. The voice, unmistakable, intimate, warm, brought a lump to my throat. I thought I had imagined it for years, heard it in dreams, in fleeting memories of phone calls that had long since stopped. But here it was again, crystal clear. Marcus leaned forward. Mr. Hayes. This is a voicemail left for Riley in 2016, purportedly from Felicia, but when I analyzed it, I noticed inconsistencies. He pulled up a waveform on the screen, highlighting subtle modulations. The pitch, the pacing, the micro-pauses, they don't match Felicia's natural voice patterns. And using spectral analysis, I detected overlapping frequencies consistent with a masked or impersonated voice. I swallowed hard. You're saying it's not her? Marcus nodded. Not Felicia. Whoever left these messages was trying to mimic her. Timing, inflection, emotional cues, all crafted to make the recipient believe Felicia was safe and communicating. Essentially, Cassandra created an audio illusion. She manipulated friends and family for years with these fake messages, maintaining the lie that Felicia was still in the world when she was trapped in the basement. Riley's eyes filled with tears. All those calls I got, all the ones I didn't get. Every week I kept hoping she'd call back. It was her sister. I pressed my palms to my face, the weight of betrayal pressing down. 8 years. 8 years of deception, of voices that weren't real, of manipulations that almost broke everyone around her. Cassandra hadn't just hidden Felicia physically. She had hijacked her voice, her identity, her existence in the minds of the people who loved her. And there's more, Marcus added, pulling up another waveform. Cassandra recorded herself responding to messages and left them on various platforms. She maintained the illusion for months, even years. Every voicemail, every email, every chat, carefully constructed to simulate Felicia being alive and well. It's psychologically sophisticated, Mr. Hayes. Calculated, consistent, chilling. I sat back in the chair, trembling. The enormity of what Cassandra had done was beyond comprehension. Not just unlawful imprisonment, not just kidnapping. She had built a full digital phantom of her sister, a life in sound that fooled us all. I whispered almost to myself. She didn't just lock Felicia away. She tried to erase her from the world and replace her with a lie. Riley nodded, voice breaking. And now we can prove it. I clenched my fists. 8 years of lies, 8 years stolen. But at last, the truth was unspooling, and Cassandra's empire of deception was crumbling. I leaned forward, straining to hear every nuance. The voice sounded identical, familiar, soft, intimate, every word calibrated to pull at my heart. But Marcus paused the playback and pulled up a spectrogram analysis. Colored bands of sound flickered across the screen. See these? He said, pointing. Notice the slight digital modulation, the near imperceptible repetition in the background frequencies. That's not natural human speech. That's a synthetic overlay. Riley swallowed hard. You're saying all those messages, all those years, it wasn't really her? Marcus nodded. Exactly. Cassandra manipulated recordings, sometimes using Felicia's old voice clips, sometimes using software to mimic her tone, pitch, and inflection. The effect is indistinguishable to casual listeners, emotionally convincing. But forensic analysis reveals anomalies. Every message has these signatures of manipulation. I felt my stomach drop. So, she created a voice, a presence, to keep us calm, to make us think she was okay, all while Felicia was locked away? Yes, Marcus said quietly. Cassandra built an auditory prison. She didn't just lock Felicia physically, she locked her existence in everyone's mind. You weren't imagining it. The messages felt real because they were engineered to feel real. Tears welled in my eyes. 8 years of believing Felicia had chosen to leave, of blaming myself, of imagining her thriving somewhere. It had all been a lie, carefully crafted, controlled, stolen from both of us. I whispered, barely audible. She didn't just steal her body, she tried to steal her life. Riley reached over and gripped my hand. But now we know, Mr. Hayes. Now we can show the world the truth. And finally, Felicia can truly come home. For the first time in 8 years, I allowed myself to imagine it. My daughter safe, free, the real Felicia back in the world, and Cassandra's lies finally unraveling. On the new window, Marcus displayed a side-by-side spectral comparison. On the left, a clip of Felicia's real college voicemail from 2015. On the right, the message I had received in 2017, the one I'd clung to for hope. The waveforms looked nearly identical at first glance. The same cadence, the same pitch contours, but the AI-generated one had subtle irregularities in the harmonic overtones, little artifacts that the human ear couldn't detect. These inconsistencies, Marcus explained, are fingerprints of synthesized audio. The pauses are unnaturally uniform, the breaths too perfect. Even the emotional inflection is slightly exaggerated, engineered to provoke the right response. Riley leaned closer, her voice shaking, so every time she said she was okay, it was Cassandra manipulating us. Marcus nodded. Every single time. This wasn't random. Cassandra built an elaborate system to convince you, and Felicia's friends, that she was safe and choosing to stay away. She weaponized your love, your hope, and your patience against you. I sank back in my chair, the weight of it pressing down. 8 years of messages, check-ins, and false reassurance, all carefully constructed illusions. Felicia's real voice had been silenced and replaced by a technological echo of her past, a haunting reminder of what we'd lost. Finally, I whispered, voice breaking. She didn't just imprison her, she rewrote reality. Riley's hand found mine again. But now, Mr. Hayes, now we can prove it. We can show everyone the truth, and Felicia can finally reclaim her life. For the first time in 8 years, the lies had cracks, and the real Felicia, the one who had been hiding in plain sight, could finally breathe free. Marcus leaned back, exhaling slowly. In 2016, you didn't need to be a hacker genius. Anyone with intermediate computer skills, access to publicly available AI voice cloning software, and enough audio samples could pull this off. It was primitive compared to today, but convincing enough to fool even family, and Cassandra clearly knew what she was doing, Riley added, her voice trembling. She had hours of Felicia's voice from videos, calls, even voicemails, all carefully collected. Every intonation, every laugh, every sigh, she used it to craft messages that sounded alive, real. But it wasn't Felicia. Marcus nodded. Exactly. And here's the critical part. She wasn't just sending random messages. She studied emotional responses. She knew which words would calm you, which phrases would make you wait, which reassurances would keep hope alive, all to manipulate you, Mr. Hayes. I sat in stunned silence, my hands trembling. She weaponized my love for my daughter. 8 years of it. Yes, Marcus said softly. Every voicemail, every note, every small interaction she engineered was part of a psychological cage. Felicia was physically trapped. And digitally, emotionally, you were trapped too. Riley reached across the table. Now we can finally expose this. Show the police, the courts, everyone what Cassandra did. It's horrifying, but Felicia can finally have her truth back. I clenched my fists, staring at the screen, the waveforms, the tiny anomalies in the audio. For the first time in years, the lies were laid bare. And for the first time in 8 years, the real Felicia could be free, and I could finally fight to give her back her life. I sank back in my chair, feeling the weight of the past 8 years crash down on me all at once. Every hope, every pang of relief, every tiny reassurance. It had been a carefully engineered illusion, my fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. All this time I thought she was out there, and it was her. It was just a machine, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Riley reached over, gripping my hand. You weren't negligent, Mr. Hayes. You were manipulated. She used technology to exploit your love and patience. Marcus leaned in, voice calm but firm. Look at these markers. Each tiny error, each pause. It's like a fingerprint. It proves beyond doubt these messages were artificially generated. The pattern, the timing, even the emotional cues. They're all deliberate. Cassandra wasn't just sending messages. She was orchestrating a psychological prison for you too. I closed my eyes, imagining Felicia, trapped in that basement, knowing she was alive but unable to speak freely, while I, her father, was kept in chains of hope and fear at the same time. My throat tightened. And she did it for what? Control? Money? To keep Felicia's designs for herself? Yes, Marcus said quietly. Everything you uncovered, the jewelry, the finances, the fake accident, it all points to careful planning from day one. She had access, knowledge, and a twisted sense of entitlement. She could manipulate the real world and the digital one simultaneously. Riley's voice cracked. But now it's over. We have proof. Felicia's alive. The messages are fake. Cassandra can't hide anymore. I nodded slowly, my hands still trembling. For the first time in 8 years, the lies were laid bare. The path forward was clear. Felicia could finally reclaim her life, and I could finally fight to protect it. But the bitterness, the betrayal, that would take much longer to untangle. Jake Morrison's voice cracked slightly as he continued. I was hesitant at first, but the cash was tempting, and she seemed so convincing. She said it was for wine storage, something private and important. She promised it was temporary, and I figured, well, a basement wine cellar isn't illegal. I had no idea what she actually planned. Detective Bennett leaned forward. Did she provide blueprints or specifications? Yes, Jake replied, running a hand through his graying hair. She had detailed measurements, instructions for ventilation, lighting, and this part, he hesitated, a reinforced steel door with a separate lock on the outside. She insisted it had to be removable in case of emergency, but to look like it wasn't there. She wanted it hidden behind shelving, flush against the wall. Officer Torres muttered under his breath. She engineered it to be invisible. Every detail is planned. Jake nodded. I asked why there was so much secrecy, and she smiled, said it was just a special project, something personal. I didn't know she meant a person would live there. I thought it was a storage room, maybe a panic room for valuables. I had no idea. His voice trailed off, guilt etched in every line of his face. Detective Bennett tapped the recorder. And the payment? Cash. No trail, Jake said quietly. $100,000 over installments. I didn't ask questions. It seemed professional at the time. Looking back, I should have said something. I pressed my hands together, staring through the glass. 8 years. Every element of Felicia's imprisonment is meticulously constructed. Even the walls, the lock, the hidden space, all built under the guise of something innocent. The enormity of Cassandra's deception hit me harder than ever. Detective Bennett's gaze sharpened. And the shelving? Jake rubbed his forehead. She had me build a tall bookshelf on wheels to conceal the steel door. She wanted it flush, so no one would suspect it. Casters, hidden pins, all of it. I didn't know what it would be used for. Officer Torres muttered. Everything planned to hide a person. Every detail. Jake nodded, voice trembling. I realized too late. By the time I saw it, everything was in place. The door, the ventilation, the toilet, the lighting. She didn't want a room for wine. She wanted a prison. I should have stopped it. I should have told someone. But I was afraid. Afraid of the money, of the fallout, and I didn't do the right thing. I didn't stop. Detective Bennett leaned back. Mr. Morrison, this isn't just about construction. It's evidence of premeditation. She planned this from the start. Jake's hands shook as he nodded. I know. I see that now. And every day, for 8 years, I've carried that guilt. I built her dream, or her crime. I helped her lock a girl away, and I didn't speak up. Through the glass, I gritted my teeth. A mix of fury and horror coursing through me. Every piece of Cassandra's plan, every calculated move, had required skilled hands, and Jake Morrison's hands had done the work. 8 years of Felicia's life. Stolen, hidden in plain sight, and all of it under the guise of something innocuous. A wine cellar. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Do you understand what she did to her? To my daughter? You helped her lock Felicia away for 8 years. Jake's voice cracked. I know. Every day I've thought about it. I wanted to stop it, but I felt trapped too. I was scared of Cassandra, and of the money, and of my own life falling apart. I made the worst mistake of my life, Mr. Hayes. I built a prison, and I didn't speak up. I leaned back, trying to process it all. Fury, grief, disbelief, it all tangled together. But then I realized something. He hadn't done it out of malice. He'd been manipulated, coerced, afraid. Another victim in Cassandra's web. I shook my head. She used everyone around her, you included. But this is your chance to make it right. You told the truth now. That counts for something. Jake nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. I just hope it's not too late. I can't undo the past, but I can help fix what I can. That's all I can do. And in that moment, I understood the depth of Cassandra's control, how she orchestrated everything. Exploited fear and loyalty, manipulated love and guilt, but also that truth, however late, still had power. And now, at last, the truth was out. I leaned forward, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup, trying to steady myself. Detective Bennett slid the folder across the table. Read it, she said softly. I unfolded Eddie's statement. His handwriting was shaky, but legible. March 15, 2016. I was near Oakwood Avenue, sleeping in the abandoned warehouse behind the gas station. Around midnight, I heard a car screech and a thud. I looked out and saw a girl get out. She looked terrified. Then a woman came out of the shadows, screaming at her, crying. She said the girl had hit someone and needed to hide. I saw the woman pull the girl into a car, and I swear I saw them drive off. I didn't call the police because I thought she really had killed someone. I've carried this with me ever since. I swallowed hard. Every word confirmed the nightmare Cassandra had built. The deception, the fear, the manipulation, and it confirmed one thing. She had orchestrated it down to the smallest detail. Detective Bennett added, Eddie says he saw everything but never came forward. Until now. He wants to help Felicia finally get justice. I nodded, staring at the paper. The last 8 years of confusion, of fear, of losing my daughter. Everything lined up now. Cassandra's plan had relied on lies, intimidation, and silence. Eddie's statement cut through all of it. She saw the whole thing, I murmured, my voice hollow. Someone else saw it too, and now, she can't hide behind it anymore. Detective Bennett's eyes were steady. Exactly. Every piece of evidence, every witness, it all points to premeditated deception. Felicia's finally safe, and Cassandra will answer for this. For the first time in years, a sliver of relief hit me. Not complete relief, not yet. But the truth was finally on our side. I swallowed hard. Felicia, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Detective Bennett shook her head. No, sir. He says the driver got out, panicked, froze for a moment, and then a second person, a man, approached, wearing a uniform. Eddie thought he might be a police officer. They spoke briefly, then the driver, still frozen, was escorted back to the car. The first man, who Eddie didn't know, took the mannequin and red liquid back to the trunk. They drove off. Eddie stayed hidden the whole time. He thought it was a real accident. He said he was too scared to call anyone. He thought someone had died. I closed my eyes. the memory of Felicia's fear flooding back. It was all staged, every single part of it. Detective Bennett nodded. Exactly. The mannequin, the fake blood, the setup on Oakwood Avenue. That's how Cassandra convinced Felicia she'd killed someone. Eddie saw it. He's the final confirmation we needed. I ran a hand through my hair, my chest tight. 8 years of fear, guilt, isolation, and it was all a lie. Yes, Detective Bennett said softly. But now we have every piece documented, every witness, every record, every confession. Cassandra can't erase the truth this time. I exhaled slowly, relief and anger mingling in my chest. For the first time in nearly a decade, the nightmare had a name, and the pieces were finally falling into place. A woman in her early 20s stood there, shaking with fear. The woman who had been observing rushed toward her, and they spoke quietly for a short while. After that, the man lifted the mannequin, placed it back into the Honda's trunk and drove off. I kept watching her. He had witnessed everything unfold. Yes, he was fully aware it was staged. He saw the act being set up from beginning to end. Then why did he stay silent? Detective Bennett. He was living on the streets. Mr. Hayes, a man struggling with alcoholism. No identification, no permanent address, no standing anyone would trust. He believed his word wouldn't matter. A drunk, homeless man versus two people who appeared polished and well off. He convinced himself they were probably shooting a film or pulling some kind of stunt. He decided it wasn't his concern. Anger rushed through me. It was his concern. A young woman disappeared. He understands that now, Detective Bennett said softly. About a month later, in April 2016, missing person posters began covering downtown. Felicia Hayes. He knew her face instantly. She was the girl from the white car. Still, he stayed silent. Fear kept him quiet. Fear they'd come after him if they knew he'd seen everything. Fear the police would suspect him. Fear that once again, no one would listen. She paused, letting it settle. For 8 long years, he carried that weight. Every time a missing person story appeared on the news, his mind went back to Felicia, but he was lost, unsure of what to do, still drinking, still homeless, still unseen. Until now, I said. Until last week. He saw the report on television. Felicia had been found alive, pulled from a basement. He's been in a recovery center for 3 months, trying to get sober. He said watching that broadcast shattered him. The guilt became unbearable. So this morning, he walked into the station and told us everything. I looked down at the folder. Does his account line up exactly with Derek's? Detective Bennett said the timing, the location, the Honda Civic, the mannequin, the staged blood. It all matches Derek Hamilton's confession. Eddie couldn't have known what Derek told us. He's never crossed paths with Derek or Cassandra. He stands as a completely independent witness. That makes his testimony incredibly important, exceptionally so. A jury will find it powerful. I gave a slow nod. Will he face charges for not speaking up sooner? No. Under Minnesota law, failing to report a crime isn't illegal unless you're a mandated reporter. Teachers, doctors, social workers. Eddie wasn't legally required to come forward, and now he's cooperating completely. I turned toward the window. The street below buzzed with life. People walking, laughing, moving on. None of them had any idea, so he just walks away. I asked. Legally, yes. Detective Bennett's tone softened. Morally, that's something he has to live with. But for what it's worth, he wanted me to give you this. She reached into the folder, pulled out a small folded note, and passed it to me. I opened it. The handwriting trembled but was clear. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner. I was afraid. I was ashamed. If I could undo it, I would. I hope your daughter finds peace. Eddie. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. I wasn't sure what I felt. Thankful. Angry. Maybe both. What happens next? I asked. Eddie will testify if we need him at trial, Detective Bennett said. With his account, Derek's confession, the forensic findings, Jake Morrison's statement, and the voice cloning analysis, we have a solid, airtight case against Cassandra. Good. She closed the folder. Mr. Hayes, I know this has been a lot to take in, but we're close now. I nodded. Almost there. But all I could think about was 8 years. One more person who could have stopped this. The arrest happened on a Saturday morning, right in the middle of Cassandra's gallery opening. Detective Bennett had chosen the timing deliberately. She's had a week of freedom while we built the case, Bennett told me the night before. But today we have everything we need, and I want her to understand that the perfect public image she's built won't protect her anymore. I stood outside Cassandra Hayes Designs, a sleek modern gallery in downtown Minneapolis at 10:45 a.m. Through the glass windows I could see about 40 guests milling around, sipping champagne, admiring jewelry displayed under spotlights, white walls, polished floors, everything pristine, curated, perfect. And there at the center of it all was Cassandra. She wore an elegant black dress, her makeup flawless, her smile confident as she gestured to a display case and spoke to a small group of VIP clients. Detective Bennett stood beside me, along with Officer Torres and 3 other officers. Mr. Hayes, are you sure you want to witness this? I nodded. I need to see it. She gave me a long look, then nodded. All right, let's go. We walked in through the front door. The bell above it chimed softly. A few guests glanced over curiously. Then they saw the uniforms. The room went quiet. Cassandra turned mid-sentence, and her eyes landed on Detective Bennett. Her smile faltered. Her face went pale. Cassandra Hayes. Detective Bennett said, her voice was calm and clear, echoing through the silent gallery. You are under arrest for kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. Cassandra took a step back. There's been a mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. You have the right to remain silent. Detective Bennett continued stepping forward. Anything you say may be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to legal counsel. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Officer Torres stepped closer to Cassandra, removing a set of handcuffs from his belt. Cassandra's gaze flicked wildly around the room. The guests had retreated, shock and disbelief written across their faces. Quiet murmurs spread. Someone lifted a phone and started recording. Then Cassandra noticed me, standing just inside the entrance watching her. Her eyes widened. Dad. I moved forward at a measured pace as the crowd instinctively parted. Cassandra looked at me, her expression breaking apart. Dad, please, she said, her voice trembling. You have to trust me. I was trying to protect her. She was in danger. Stop lying, Cassandra, I said softly. I know the truth. The staged accident, Thomas Whitmore, the AI voice messages, Jake Morrison, Eddie, Derek Hamilton, all of it. She shook her head as tears spilled down her cheeks. You don't understand. Felicia was going to leave us. She had a job offer in New York. She was going to abandon the family. After Mom died, I promised I'd keep us together. By locking your sister in a basement for 8 years? My voice rose. By stealing her designs? By convincing her she was a murderer? I fed her, Cassandra cried. I gave her art supplies. I kept her safe. You imprisoned her, I shouted. She was 19 years old, Cassandra. Her entire future was ahead of her, and you took it away. Cassandra crumpled to her knees, sobbing. I never meant for it to last 8 years, she whispered. I was going to let her go. I just couldn't. I needed her father. I needed her skill. I needed those creations. I needed her. I looked down at my daughter, the one I had trusted without question, the one I had defended. And standing there was someone I no longer knew, someone who truly believed she had been justified. You didn't need her, I said quietly. You exploited her. And in doing that you ruined both your lives. Officer Torres helped Cassandra to her feet. Her body shook as he secured the cuffs behind her back. The gallery had gone completely still. Near the entrance, a few reporters clustered together, cameras flashing. Detective Bennett motioned sharply, pushing them back. As Cassandra was escorted toward the exit, she paused beside me. I did it for us, Dad, she whispered. I was trying to keep us together. Don't you see? I didn't respond. Please don't hate me, she added, her voice barely audible. I'm still your daughter. My voice trembled. You were my daughter, but I don't know who you are anymore. Cassandra broke down as Officer Torres guided her away. The crowd parted, Cameras snapped. Someone shouted a question, but Detective Bennett shut it down immediately. I remained standing in the gallery, alone among the display cases. Cassandra's collection, Felicia's work. I stepped closer to one case, a silver necklace, delicate vines twisting around a central pendant. I leaned in, narrowing my eyes. There it was, tucked into the curve of a leaf, the letter F. Riley's words rang in my head. She had been crying out for help in every single piece. Through the front window, I watched as Officer Torres opened the cruiser door and helped Cassandra inside. She looked back once, her face streaked with tears, her flawless image in ruins. "I did it for us, Dad," she'd said. I stood there, surrounded by beauty that had been stolen, and felt something inside me finally give way, because the most brutal truth wasn't that she had ruined Felicia's life. It was that she still believed after everything that she had been right. 1 week after Cassandra was taken into custody, Felicia was released from the hospital. Doctors said her body had stabilized, but they cautioned that the damage ran deeper. Months, maybe years of therapy lay ahead before she could truly heal. That evening, in the living room of the very house where she'd been held, my daughter finally told me how she endured it. I'd cleared out the basement and sealed it off. I couldn't bring myself to tear the walls down, not yet. Instead, I locked the door and concealed it behind a tall bookshelf. Felicia told me she never wanted to see it again. Not ever. She sat curled on the couch in an oversized hoodie, color slowly returning to her skin after a week of freedom. I brewed tea and sat beside her, careful not to push. "Dad," she said quietly, "I want to tell you everything. Not for the police, not for the trial, just for you. So you understand?" I told her she didn't have to, especially if it was too soon. "I need to," she said. "I have to say it out loud so I know it's really finished." I nodded. "I'm here." "The first week was the hardest," Felicia said, her fingers tightening around the mug. "I cried all the time. I couldn't eat. I kept thinking it was a nightmare, and I'd wake up, but I never did." She stared into the tea. Cassandra brought food 3 times a day. She'd sit outside the door and talk through the gap. She kept saying she was protecting me, that the police were looking for me, that if they found me, I'd go to prison. Felicia swallowed. She said she was looking for a lawyer, and that it would take time. She kept telling me I just had to trust her. My jaw tightened. "I believed her," Felicia whispered. "I was terrified. I thought I'd killed someone. I thought I was a murderer." Her voice shook, so I forced myself to eat. I kept going because I believed that if I stayed alive long enough, Cassandra would make it right, but she didn't. "No," I said quietly. By the 2nd month, when I asked when I could leave, she told me, "Not yet." Then it became 3 months, then 6, then a year. Her voice fractured. That's when I understood. She was never going to let me go. She paused, steadying herself. In 2017, something unexpected happened. One day, I heard movement in the vent. She looked up at me. A bird, a sparrow with a broken wing, fell into the room. I stared at her, stunned. "I took care of it," she said softly. "I tore strips of cloth to make a splint, fed it crumbs from my bread. I named her Hope." Her eyes filled with tears. Watching Hope heal gave me a reason to keep living. It reminded me that broken things could be fixed. "What happened to her?" I asked. In 2018, I helped her escape through the vent. I thought she'd fly away, but 2 days later, she came back. Felicia managed a faint smile. That's when I realized we were the same. She couldn't leave me. I couldn't leave that room, but having her there kept me alive. She wiped her eyes. To keep my mind from breaking, I started drawing. Cassandra gave me paper, pencils, and art books. She told me I needed to design jewelry for her. She said the money would help with my legal defense. I closed my eyes. "That wasn't why I drew," Felicia said. "I drew for myself. Every single day." She told me she sketched forests, oceans, birds, and me, over 100 portraits of my face, recreated from memory. "Drawing you kept me going, Dad," she said. "It reminded me someone out there loved me, that one day you'd find me." In 2019, she went on. Cassandra became more demanding. She wanted new designs for her business. By then I knew there were no lawyers, No plan to free me, but I needed something to believe in. So I kept designing. She looked straight at me. That's when I started hiding the letter F in every piece. I nodded. Riley told me. I knew she would notice. In college, Riley and I used to hide marks in our work, Felicia said. It was our way of claiming it, of saying, this is mine. So I did it again. That letter became my quiet scream. From 2019 to 2022, she created 15 pieces, each one marked with the hidden F. Her voice shook, and only Riley saw it. Only Riley. I reached for her hand. She never gave up on you. I know, Felicia whispered. She saved me. By the 8th year, she said. Hope was slipping away. She believed she'd die in that room. She stopped drawing as much, stopped caring. Then one day, she heard a man's voice outside. Gary, she said. He was talking to you. Something inside her broke open. I started crying louder, she said. A few days later, she heard my voice. I'd said her name. Her hands trembled as she spoke. The moment I heard you, I knew I would live. I knew you were coming. I pulled her into my arms, and we cried together. Not from pain anymore, but from relief. I drew something every single day, Felicia said quietly. Sketches of you. Of forests and open skies I couldn't see. Of hope. The bird who showed me that even broken wings can heal. She looked at me, and for the first time in 8 years, I saw light return to her eyes. I lived because I believed you would find me, even when I wanted to give up, even when I thought I'd die down there. I kept drawing you, because I knew you would never stop being my father. I held her tightly, and we cried again, because she was right. I had never stopped being her father. I had only lost sight of the truth for too long. 3 months later, I sat in the gallery of the Hennepin County Courthouse, watching my eldest daughter face justice. The trial had stretched over 2 exhausting weeks, but this was sentencing day. Cassandra sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her hands clasped in her lap, her face pale yet carefully controlled. Behind me, Felicia held my hand tightly. We were here to see one chapter close and another begin. The courtroom was silent. Dark wood panels, towering ceilings, the seal of Minnesota mounted behind the bench. Judge Margaret Sullivan, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness, reviewed the case file one final time before lifting her gaze. This court is now in session, she said. I felt Felicia stiffen beside me. The trial had taken its toll. 2 weeks filled with testimony, evidence, and relentless legal arguments. The prosecution had constructed an airtight case. Cassandra Hayes faced charges of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. Derek Hamilton had been tried separately and had already pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. The witness testimony had been devastating. Felicia Hayes took the stand on the 3rd day. In a calm, steady voice, she described 8 years spent in a basement room. For 8 years I believed I was a murderer, she said, meeting Cassandra's eyes. My sister stole my life with a lie. Derek Hamilton testified on the 5th day. He admitted to staging the accident, impersonating a police officer, and helping Cassandra sustain the deception. His voice faltered when he said, I was a coward. I should have stopped it. I didn't. Dorothy Green had submitted her journals and the security footage, 8 years' worth of proof, a clear pattern of late-night movement. Cassandra arrives and leaves with bags of groceries. I should have contacted the police earlier, she'd said, her voice unsteady. I'll carry that regret for the rest of my life. Riley Summers had broken down the hidden F marks. 15 designs spread across 3 years. Felicia was begging for help, Riley had said, and I nearly overlooked it. Eddie had testified about seeing the staged accident. His version aligned perfectly with Derek Hamilton's statement. An eyewitness with no ties to anyone involved. The proof had been crushing. The jury needed less than 4 hours to return guilty verdicts on every charge. Now, 3 months after Cassandra's arrest, it was time to decide her sentence. Judge Margaret Sullivan lifted her eyes to Cassandra. Miss Hayes, do you wish to speak before the court imposes sentence? Cassandra rose slowly. Her attorney reached for her arm, but she pulled away. Yes, Your Honor. She turned toward the gallery. Her gaze found me. And Felicia, I know what everyone believes, she said, her voice shaking, that I'm a monster, that I'm cruel, but that isn't who I am. I love my sister. I always have. Felicia's fingers tightened around mine. Felicia was going to leave, Cassandra went on. She had a job offer in New York. She was going to abandon us. After Mom died, I promised I'd keep our family together. I was trying to protect her. I fed her. I gave her art supplies. I kept her safe. You locked me in a basement. You stole 8 years of my life. Felicia's voice cut through the courtroom from behind me. Judge Margaret Sullivan raised her hand. Miss Hayes, you will have your chance to speak. Cassandra's face collapsed. I never meant for it to go on for 8 years. I was going to let her go, but I couldn't. I needed her. I needed her talent, and I truly believed I was doing the right thing. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked at me. Dad, please, I did it for us. I did it so we wouldn't fall apart. I said nothing. I couldn't. Judge Sullivan's expression hardened. Miss Hayes, you may be seated. She opened the sentencing file. The courtroom held its breath. Cassandra Hayes, Judge Sullivan began. You have been found guilty by a jury of your peers of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. The evidence presented during this trial demonstrates a sustained pattern of calculated, intentional cruelty over the course of 8 years. She lifted her eyes, her gaze unyielding. You did not act out of love, Miss Hayes. You acted out of control. Love does not imprison. Love does not deceive. Love does not steal another human being's life. Cassandra lowered her head. On the charge of kidnapping, I sentence you to 15 years of incarceration. On the charge of unlawful imprisonment, I sentence you to 10 years, to be served consecutively. In combination with the remaining convictions, your total sentence is 25 years at the Minnesota Correctional Facility for Women. You will be eligible for parole after 15 years. The gavel struck the bench. The sharp crack echoed through the room. 25 years. Cassandra's shoulders trembled. Her attorney leaned close, murmuring something under his breath. 2 officers stepped forward to escort her away. As they guided her past me, Cassandra paused. Dad. I met her eyes. The child I had raised. The girl I'd taught to ride a bike, to tie her shoes, to be kind. I'm sorry, she whispered. I said nothing. There was nothing left to give her. Outside the courtroom, Felicia collapsed against me, her body shaking with silent tears. The sentence doesn't give me back those 8 years, she murmured. I wrapped my arms around her more tightly. No, I said, but it means it can never happen again. We stayed there like that for a while. Then Felicia pulled herself together, wiped her face, and looked up at me. Can we go home now? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, let's go home. Outside, the sun was warm and bright, and for the first time in 8 years my daughter stepped into it as a truly free woman. 6 months after the trial, I stood near the back of a packed bookstore, watching Felicia speak to a crowd of nearly 200 people. She'd put on 15 pounds. Her hair was cut short now, confident and sharp, and there was color in her cheeks again. But more than anything else, there was light in her eyes, real light, born from healing, not just endurance. The bookstore was Malaprops, a warm, independent shop in downtown Minneapolis. The audience was a blend of reporters, supporters, trauma survivors, and curious readers. In the front row sat Riley, Stephen, Dorothy, and Gary, the people who had stood with us and helped bring Felicia back. On the table beside her lay a neat stack of books. The cover showed a lone bird breaking free from a dark cage, wings stretched wide against an open sky. The Hidden Room. I had already read it twice. Each time it shattered me. And each time it reminded me exactly why we had fought so hard. Felicia stood behind the podium, her tone calm, almost gentle. She wore a plain black sweater and jeans, her hands loosely clasped. Thank you all for coming, she said. Writing this book wasn't easy, but I had to tell this story not only for myself, but for anyone who has ever felt trapped by circumstances, trapped by trauma, trapped under someone else's control. She paused, letting her eyes move across the audience. I spent 8 years in a basement, 8 years believing I had killed someone. My sister made me believe the world was better without me, that I was broken, dangerous, unlovable. Her voice faltered, but she pushed on. But I wasn't broken. I was manipulated, and it took me a very long time to understand the difference. The room held its breath. Riley was openly crying. Down there I had almost nothing, Felicia continued. But I had paper, I had pencils, and I had a sparrow named Hope. A few people laughed softly through tears. Hope was injured when she fell through the ventilation shaft. I took care of her until she healed. And when I finally let her go, she came back. She taught me that even in the darkest places, life still finds a way. Her gaze met mine across the room. Stacia and I wrote this book for my dad, the man who never stopped being my father. Even when I believed he had forgotten me, my throat tightened. I could only nod. After the event, we drove home. Not to the house on Ashford Lane. We'd sold it months earlier. Neither of us could bear to live there again. Our new apartment sat on the 5th floor of a modern building near the river, with floor-to-ceiling windows that filled every room with light. Felicia had insisted on that. I need to see the sky, she'd said, always. That night, we sat together on the couch, mugs of tea warming our hands, the city lights glowing softly outside. That was incredible, sweetheart, I said. You were amazing. She smiled, truly smiled, warm, whole, real. Thanks, Dad. It felt good. Scary, but good. How are you really doing? I asked. She paused, thinking. I'm better. Therapy helps. The support groups help. And honestly, the art therapy workshops have been the best thing I've ever done. After the trial, Felicia chose not to return to jewelry design. Instead, she founded Hope's Wings Art Therapy, a nonprofit offering free creative workshops for survivors of trauma. Through painting, drawing, and sculpture, she helped others work through their pain the same way she had. You're helping so many people, I said. I think I needed to find meaning in what happened, she replied. I can't change the past, but I can help people who are going through something like I did. I nodded. Your mom would be so proud of you. Her smile wavered for just a moment. Then she asked something I hadn't expected. Do you think I'll ever be able to forgive Cassandra? I set my mug down, choosing my words with care. I don't know, honey. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give, if and when you're ready. I know, she said softly. Part of me still loves her. She was my sister, but another part of me, I don't know if I can ever let that go. You don't have to decide anything today, I told her. Healing takes time, and you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. She rested her head on my shoulder. Thanks, Dad. Later that night, I stood by the window, staring out at the glowing skyline. Felicia had gone to bed, exhausted, but at peace. I thought about everything we had survived together. The lies, the manipulation, 8 years of silence, the trial, the hurt, all of it weighed on me. But what stayed with me most was the light I'd seen in Felicia's eyes, the way she stood before 200 people and spoke her truth without breaking, the way she transformed something shattered into something meaningful. She hadn't merely survived, she had prevailed. I looked at the book resting on the coffee table, the hidden room, and smiled. Tomorrow, we will keep moving forward. We would continue healing. We would keep shaping this new life, one careful step at a time. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel something unfamiliar, something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Felicia was safe. She was resilient. She was free. And finally, so was I. And to anyone hearing this family's story, remember this. I almost lost my daughter, not because I didn't love her, but because I placed my trust in the wrong place. I believed appearances instead of instincts. I chose silence instead of questions. I chose comfort instead of truth. If I could turn back time, I would listen more closely. I would ask the hard questions. I would trust faith to guide me through doubt instead of burying it beneath guilt and exhaustion. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait 8 years to see what's right in front of you. I was given 3 chances to face the truth. When Gary heard crying in the basement, when Dorothy showed me the receipts, and when Riley discovered the hidden signature, 3 times, a voice urged me to look closer, and 3 times, I nearly looked away. Thank God I didn't. This family's story taught me something painful but essential. Love without vigilance isn't protection. Love without action isn't enough. And for my daughter, Justice was never about revenge. It was about refusing to let evil hide behind the word family. So here's what I've learned. Don't make the same mistake I did. Never believe that the people closest to you are incapable of doing harm. Don't ignore warning signs just because acknowledging them feels uncomfortable. And never stop protecting the ones you love, even when doing so means standing up to someone you care about deeply. This father's fight wasn't just for Felicia. It was for every parent who was misled, every sibling who felt the sharp pain of betrayal, and every survivor who was pushed into silence. Some might call it revenge, but to me, it's something else entirely. It's a father's resolve, a parent's unwavering refusal to allow their child to suffer in silence. If this story touched you, made you reflect, or reminded you to stay alert, share your thoughts in the comments below. Pass this story along to someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss another powerful story that truly matters. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Your time and attention mean more than you know. And before you go, here's a quick friendly reminder. If you believe in standing up for family, truth, and justice, make sure you subscribe to A Father's Wrath and become part of our growing community. We share stories that make you think, feel, and stay aware. As always, the stories on this channel may include fictional elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better match your interests. Take care, stay strong, and stay vigilant.